For joining us here on CNBC TV 18. We are still, of course, awaiting clarity on whether it is going to be the Congress-JDS combined in power in Karnataka or the BJP will manage to stake claim. But what impact is this likely to have, if any, on the economic policy, on the economic direction, especially when it comes to the policies of the centre?
Shereen, is very clear that the electorate, the population recognizes Mr. Modi's credibility and the credibility of his development agenda, and I think therefore for the central government it would mean much more attention and even more attention to the implementation of the development policies that will benefit those at the bottom of the pyramid, attract private investment and accelerate economic growth, basically further strengthen the economic recovery that is now on way. I just want to emphasize that for me the Karnataka verdict is all about people accepting Mr. Modi's call for all-round and sabka saath, sabka vikas type of policies, and they are not interested in and they are not swayed by caste combinations, etc., etc. So I think we should now recognize that the people of India are going to hold government responsible for development and not for any other spurious purposes which they may have been hoodwinked into doing so far.
Well, I'm not sure if that necessarily will be an argument that this verdict bears out, because this is also about caste arithmetic, and really the issues of development were not the issues that the BJP was fielding on the campaign trail. But that apart, sir, let me ask you about the challenges that we now see. And a lot of people that who watch the economy closely say that perhaps this business of who comes to power in Karnataka is overstated. What we do need to focus on is the macros, and the macros now seem to be looking far more challenging than they did a few months ago, especially when it comes to oil prices, especially when it comes to the inflation print. How worried would you be about the worsening of the macros and what that would portend as far as the state of the economy is concerned?
Let me first take you on for the fact that this election campaign trail was not about development. I didn't hear Prime Minister Modi in his rallies talk at all about caste and communal and etc. issues, and he kept emphasizing good governance and development. And I think that's what the electorate has now clearly indicated is what they prefer. On the macroeconomic situation of an inflation rate of 4.3%, with food inflation down where it is and nowhere inching up, with the government having now taken many steps to make sure that the food inflation will never raise its ugly head again. I'm not unduly concerned, because the range is up to 6% for CPI, even for the RBI. On the global oil prices, yes, of course, they have gone up and they are even tending to go up further. And I have been quoted in public to say that this is perhaps the time when the government, both the state and the central government, must think seriously about reducing the tax burden on petroleum products, so that the ordinary person doesn't feel the pressure of rising oil prices. Apart from those two, Shereen, I think our macroeconomic situation looks much better than what it has done in the past. Our investment credit offtake is better, our IPOs are better, our corporate bond markets are doing better. The only thing that could cause a little bit of worry is the rise in bond yields, which could well have been because of the political uncertainty hanging until yesterday. And I don't know, I haven't seen the numbers today, but been talking to Moody's this morning, and they didn't seem unduly worried about the bond price increase at this point of time. So I'm not sure where you see the macroeconomic picture being as challenging as you make it out to be.
No, I'm just talking about specifically the crude prices as well as inflation, and those two don't portend well as far as our macros are concerned. But let me ask you then, sir, about the possibility of an
inflation is only 4.3%.
Yes.
The inflation is only
it is
4.3%.
higher. It is higher than what was
CPI
it is higher than what was
much
expected,
lower.
and IIP is lower. And IIP is lower than what was expected.
Yes.
But that apart, sir, you talked about the possibility of an excise cut, and you said that you would support, in fact, you are demanding an excise cut. Do you believe that the time has come now? Because our understanding is that the government was waiting to see if prices will hold at these levels. Given the fact that we're almost now nudging at $80 a barrel, do you believe that, that the time has come now for an excise cut?
I just said so, and I don't think that I can demand anything. But clearly, this is the time to consider those excise cuts, especially because the sowing season will begin again, and the farmers would be using a lot more diesel than what they've done in the past. And I think that it's worth considering. So I'm merely suggesting that this is the time, because given the Iran sanctions, I doubt if the oil price supply situation globally will improve any further. And given the synchronous recovery and higher growth globally, and China remaining strong, Chinese demand remaining strong, it may well be a little bit of time before oil prices begin to look southwards. So this is the time. At least we in the NITI Aayog feel we should be thinking of a excise cut, but both by the centre and the state governments, and not by the centre alone.
Sir, you talked about the sowing season, and one of the crucial decisions.
If I may add,
yes.
Can I add? And which is also the latest GST numbers of more than 1 lakh of crores collected in April, and this appreciable widening of the tax base and direct tax base implies that we could have a much better buoyancy in both direct and indirect taxes as we go forward. And so therefore there is fiscal space available for this cut. So I'm therefore saying that we would still remain fiscally prudent by doing this cut.
Sure. If I may then take that argument that you presented to us forward, if you say that both on the direct taxes side as well as the indirect taxes side, the government is seeing a significant tax buoyancy and hence there is fiscal headroom, why then, sir, the need for a sugar cess as part of the GST? Yesterday there was a meeting of the GOM within the GST Council to look at this particular issue. Why then the need for a cess, which really most people would argue distorts the basis of a goods and services tax?
Well, that's simply because this is a very temporary phenomena, which is required to to sort of drive the sugar industry out of its very temporary crisis that it has faced because of declining global prices. And so therefore you don't want to so you want to mop up some resources to meet this contingency. And that's the only thing. And cess, because the cess accrues, as you know, only to the central government, which has to bear the entire burden of bailing out the sugar industry, which the state governments do not. So therefore, I think it's quite reasonable, for the government to consider a cess to address this present situation. Now, it's a different matter that what we need to do is to take some structural steps to ensure that this cobweb phenomena doesn't continue in the sugar industry or in other agricultural commodities. But that, as you can see, is a longer-term policy issue that we are now addressing and beginning to consider quite seriously in NITI Aayog.
You talked about the sowing season, sir, and one of the crucial decisions that we're awaiting clarity on is the MSP decision. When can we expect that? We've been waiting for a while. Has a decision been taken? When can we expect the details?
The Prime Minister has promised, if you remember, that this will be in place for the Kharif season, and I can assure you that this will be in place before the Kharif sowing starts.
Okay, it will be in place before the Kharif season.
We are working.
But on the formula itself, sir, on the details of the formula itself.
Sorry? Yeah, but
on the details of the formula
still
itself.
Being worked at. And we are looking at we are looking at more than one option. And but again, the formula is quite clear that for the minimum assured prices, as the Prime Minister has said, that it will be A2 plus, what is it?
FL.
A2 plus cost.
FL.
Right? FL, A2 plus FL, and that will remain. That will remain, and we are committed to that. So for the, there are three options that NITI had suggested, and in that, the minimum assured price option will use this formula. But whether all three options will be put out to the states, and and what form it will take, the price stability option, which is the Bhavantar option, and then then the stockists option, where we are trying to see if we can bring in the private traders to offer minimum support prices to the farmers, and work out as to how that will that will take shape. I think that needs a little bit more work, and we are at it, I assure you, in NITI Aayog.
I'll end then by asking you, sir, as we get closer to more state elections and, of course, the general election, and, of course, corridors of power seem to be abuzz with the possibility of an early election as well, but that, at this point in time, is purely speculative. What do you believe will be the economic priorities as we move now from this big state election that is past us towards other elections and, of course, the big one, the general election?
Shereen, you must have heard Amit Shah Saab saying that early elections are, or simultaneous elections are not on the card at the moment. So that is as far as that is concerned. And you also must have noticed that at least for this government, elections haven't mattered in terms of framing and designing economic policies. Because we take them in our stride, and we continue with, and I say the priority must be.
But sir, then how do you explain the fact? How do you explain the fact? Yeah, but then how do you explain the fact that we didn't see fuel prices being hiked through the course of the Karnataka campaign, and a day after the Karnataka election, we saw oil marketing companies hike prices, even though the sector is deregulated, and even though daily price revisions are the order of the day?
You must have to ask the oil companies about that, isn't it? I mean, NITI Aayog is not involved.
I'm asking you because you said that elections don't dictate policy.
But you must have seen in the last 4 years that all our policies and all that NITI has been doing and advising, whether it's on, nourishment, whether it's on rankings, on health and education, and on suggesting lists of, for privatization or disinvestment, nothing of that has actually been affected or influenced by elections coming, or the proximity of elections. But you know that whatever be the electoral cycle, you would need to reinforce this recovery and make sure that you get more jobs, because although there are, this has not been a jobless growth, that narrative has finally been thankfully debunked. We do need more employment, and we do need more young people into productive occupations as we go forward. I think that's the must.
Right. Well, Mr. Kumar, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, sir. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18.